The day I got my promotion should have been the best day of my life. Instead, it became a battlefield. I was still staring at the congratulatory email from corporate when my phone exploded with texts. Not from friends. Not from colleagues. From them. My parents, who I hadn't heard from in 3 years, suddenly knew my exact new salary down to the dollar. They showed up at my Denver apartment that same evening, uninvited, with a grocery store sheet cake and smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They didn't ask how I was doing. They didn't say they were proud. They asked one question: "How much are you making now?" And then, without hesitation, they demanded half of it. Every single month. Like it was already theirs. My name is Madison Pierce, and this is the story of how I finally broke free. I've always been the kind of person who keeps her head down and works twice as hard as everyone else. Maybe it's because I learned early that nobody was coming to rescue me. I left home at 19 with barely enough money for a security deposit, a partial scholarship to the University of Colorado, and a promise I made to myself in the mirror: I would never, ever owe anyone my freedom. I worked graveyard shifts at a 24-hour diner, studied during lunch breaks, and clawed my way up through 3 different companies until I landed a position as a senior compliance officer at a financial consulting firm in Denver. People who meet me now see someone put together, shoulder-length auburn hair, always neat, clean business casual, that calm exterior of someone who's earned every inch of her space. But they don't see what it cost. The years of being told I was selfish for wanting my own life. The endless guilt trips. The emotional ledger my parents kept, itemizing every meal, every ride to school, every birthday card like I owed interest on love. That night when they appeared at my door, all those years came crashing back. My mother, Patricia, walked in first. She always led the charge. A cloud of floral perfume announced her before her tight smile did. The kind she used when she wanted something, but pretended she didn't. My father, Gary, shuffled in behind her, hands buried in his coat pockets, eyes already sweeping my apartment like an appraiser. They dropped the cake on my counter with a hollow thud. "Congratulations, sweetie," Mom said, but her eyes were cold, calculating. She didn't hug me. She scanned my living room, taking inventory. New couch. Flat screen TV. The kind of things I'd saved months to afford. Dad let out a low whistle. "You're doing real well for yourself, Maddie. Better than us, that's for sure." He said it like an accusation. Like my success was a betrayal. Mom settled into one of my kitchen chairs without being invited. "We've been talking," she began, folding her hands on my table like she was about to deliver a sermon. "And we think it's only fair that you start contributing to the family. You're making good money now. Real good money. We think 50% is reasonable. Just until we get back on our feet." She said it so casually, like it was a done deal, like I'd already agreed. My father nodded along, arms crossed. "After everything we did for you, it's the least you can do." There it was. The script I'd heard my entire childhood. Every school supply. Every meal. Every piece of clothing. They'd kept a running tab in their heads, and now they were here to collect with interest. My chest tightened. My shoulders pulled back instinctively, an old defense mechanism I'd developed over years of being cornered. But this time, something was different. This time, I wasn't that scared 19-year-old girl anymore. "That's not going to happen," I said quietly. Mom's smile flickered. "Honey, don't be difficult. Family takes care of family." "Then where were you when I needed help with tuition?" I asked. "Where were you when I was working 2 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night?" Dad's face darkened. "We gave you a roof over your head for 18 years. You wouldn't be anywhere without us." The same line. Word for word. I'd heard it when I asked for help with college applications. When I needed a co-signer for my first apartment. When I called crying after my car broke down. Every time I needed them, they reminded me of the debt I supposedly owed. But when I needed actual help? Silence. "You left home and never looked back," Mom said, her voice sharpening. You just walked away from us, like we meant nothing. I left because every conversation turned into a guilt trip, I replied. Because you treated love like a loan I could never pay off. A flash of anger crossed her face. You're being dramatic. And ungrateful. Ungrateful, I repeated. Her favorite word. The one she wielded like a weapon whenever I set a boundary. Dad leaned forward, his tone hardening. This isn't a negotiation, Madison. 50%. Starting next month. We need it, and you owe us. I don't owe you anything, I said. The words came out steady, clear, final. They both froze. For a moment, the apartment was silent, except for the hum of my refrigerator. Then Dad stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. We're your parents. You don't get to talk to us like this. I stood up too. Not aggressively. Just calmly, deliberately. I walked to the kitchen counter, opened a drawer, and pulled out an envelope I'd prepared weeks earlier. I didn't know I'd need it this soon, but some part of me had known this day was coming. I turned back to them, holding the envelope between two fingers. This, I said, is what you really came here for. Mom's eyes locked onto it immediately. Dad straightened, a flicker of greed crossing his face. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd caved. They had no idea the ground beneath them was already crumbling. I placed the envelope on the table. Mom reached for it instantly, but I put my hand over hers, gently but firmly. Her eyes widened. Before you open this, I said, I need you to understand something. You don't get to walk into my life and demand half of it. Not anymore. Mom yanked her hand back. It's just money, Madison. Stop being so dramatic. She's always been like this, Dad muttered. Always thinks she's smarter than everyone else. I ignored him. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed calm. Controlled. I stepped back, crossing my arms. Open it. Mom pulled the envelope toward her, fingers trembling slightly. She tore it open, and paper spilled onto the table. Crisp. Notarized. Official. Not a check. Not an apology. Just the truth. A truth they'd signed themselves into years ago and forgotten. As they scanned the first page, their expressions shifted. Confusion. Disbelief. Then something closer to panic. This isn't real, Mom stammered. Oh, it's real, I said. Your signatures are right there at the bottom. Dad squinted at the paper, his face going pale. We didn't. We never agreed to this. You did, I said calmly. 3 years ago, when I lent you $8,000 for your so-called emergency. You signed a promissory note. With interest. You've never paid back a single cent. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Every missed payment, every ignored reminder, every excuse documented in black and white. This is entrapment, Dad said, his voice cracking. You tricked us. I protected myself, I corrected, because I knew this moment would come. The moment you tried to take more than you ever gave. Mom's face crumpled. We're your parents. How could you do this to us? How could you do this to me? I shot back. How could you show up here demanding half my income when you haven't even asked how I'm doing? Tears welled in Mom's eyes, but they didn't move me. Not this time. I'd seen her cry before, usually right before she got her way. We'll fight this, Dad said, slamming the papers down. We'll take you to court. You already did, I said. Their heads snapped up. What? You already filed a petition, I said evenly. A parental support claim. I got the notice 3 days ago. Mom's face went white. Dad froze like someone had hit pause. They hadn't expected me to know, and they certainly hadn't expected me to say it out loud. And before you try to deny it, I continued, yes, I saw the fake text messages you submitted as evidence. The ones where I supposedly promised to send you money every month. Except the phone number was wrong. 1 digit off. Sloppy work. Mom's breath hitched. Dad took a step backward. You committed fraud, I said quietly. You didn't just cross a line. You erased it. We can explain, Mom said, her voice breaking. You'll get your chance, I replied. In front of a judge. Dad's voice rose, desperate now. You wouldn't do this to your own parents. You already did it to your own daughter, I said. I'm just defending myself. Right then, the doorbell rang. 3 short chimes. Dad flinched. Mom gasped. I didn't move. A moment later, I opened the door. 2 women stood there. My lawyer, Elena, in a sharp navy blazer, and a process server holding a folder. Evening, Elena said smoothly. I believe we have some documents for the Pierces. The server stepped forward. Patricia and Gary Pierce. Mom backed away like the walls were closing in. This is a setup. She planned this. Jessica, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. You're being served, the server said calmly, regarding fraudulent evidence submitted in a civil petition and attempted financial coercion under false pretenses. Dad's knees buckled slightly. You can't do this. We're family. Elena glanced at him with ice in her eyes. Family isn't a shield when you break the law. Mom's voice turned shrill. She trapped us. That envelope. She set us up. That envelope, Elena said, contains a notarized agreement you both willingly signed. You can't claim ignorance now. Dad lunged forward, his voice cracking. We needed that money. We had no choice. And she needed parents, Elena shot back. All she got were bill collectors. The words hit like a slap. Mom pressed her hands to her face, sobbing loudly. Dad sank into a chair, his face gray. The server handed over the documents. You'll receive your court date within 10 days. When the door closed behind them, the apartment felt different. Lighter, like a window had been opened in a house that had been sealed shut for years. The courtroom was freezing the morning of the hearing. Too bright, too sterile. My parents sat at one table, hunched over and pale. Mom had red-rimmed eyes, like she'd been crying for days. Dad stared at the floor, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Elena stood beside me, calm and unshakable. When the judge read the charges, Mom immediately burst into tears. Your Honor, we only wanted our daughter to help us. We're in such a terrible place financially. She abandoned us when we needed her most. Elena stood. Your Honor, if I may. She approached with a stack of documents. The petitioners own a property in Aurora, valued at $320,000. They receive combined retirement income of $4,800 monthly. Their claim of financial hardship is demonstrably false. She lifted another set of papers. Furthermore, these text messages submitted as evidence are fabricated. The phone number does not belong to Ms. Pierce. We have carrier records proving it. The judge studied the documents, his expression darkening. Mom sobbed harder. Dad muttered something under his breath. Then the courtroom door opened. My grandmother, Catherine, walked in slowly, leaning on her cane. The room went silent. She took the witness stand with steady hands. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and strong. Madison asked for nothing from these two. She left home at 19 and built her own life. They never supported her. They drained her. She owes them nothing. Mom's sobs turned into a sharp gasp. Mom, how could you? Grandma didn't even look at her. The truth matters more than blood. The judge leaned back, exhaling slowly. Given the fraudulent evidence, the lack of demonstrated hardship, and the testimony provided, this petition is dismissed. Furthermore, the court is imposing a fine of $5,000 for the submission of falsified materials. Mom crumpled forward. Dad stared straight ahead, stunned into silence. Elena squeezed my arm gently. Not in celebration, just acknowledgement. Outside, the Colorado sun hit me like warmth I hadn't felt in years. I stood on the courthouse steps, breathing deeply, letting the weight slide off my shoulders. Behind me, my parents stood frozen, small and defeated, just like the envelope promised. The week after the hearing was strange, quiet in a way I wasn't used to. No angry texts, no guilt-laden voicemails, no sudden visits, just silence, the kind of silence that felt like oxygen. I moved out of my old apartment into a new place in the Highlands neighborhood, close enough to downtown that the city lights sparkled at night, but far enough that I could breathe. I furnished it slowly. A vintage armchair from a flea market, a standing lamp with soft yellow light, a succulent that somehow refused to die no matter how little I watered it. Every corner felt like mine, truly mine. 3 days after I settled in, a birthday card arrived. Thin, cream-colored, my grandmother's neat handwriting on the front. Inside, just one line: you chose courage over comfort. I'm so proud of you. I held that card against my chest for a long moment. No drama, no strings, just love. The quiet kind. But peace doesn't stay untouched for long. A week later, another envelope appeared under my door. My name scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting. My mother's. I opened it carefully, already bracing myself. It wasn't an apology. Of course it wasn't. People who don't think they've done anything wrong never apologize. Instead, it was a list: medical complaints, emotional appeals, and at the bottom, a request for money to help them through this difficult time. No mention of the court case, no acknowledgement of the fraud, just expectation wrapped in self-pity. I folded the letter once, then again, and placed it in the recycling bin. My hands didn't shake. That same week, I got a call I wasn't ready for. My grandmother had passed away peacefully in her sleep. The world felt a little dimmer, but not broken. Her attorney told me later that she'd left me her small house in Boulder. I didn't keep it. I sold it and donated the proceeds to a nonprofit that helps women escape financial abuse. It felt right. It felt like honoring her. One quiet evening, I stood by my window overlooking the city. The Denver skyline stretched out before me, lights flickering like scattered stars. For the first time in my life, I wasn't replaying old arguments. I wasn't rehearsing apologies. I wasn't bracing for the next attack. I was simply free. I walked down to Confluence Park that evening, letting the cool Colorado air settle against my skin. The river moved slowly, steady, like it had all the time in the world. And maybe, finally, so did I. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Quiet, earned, unburdened. I thought about that envelope, the one my parents opened with so much confidence. It didn't hold money. It held the truth, the first real boundary I ever set without apologizing for it. Months passed. Winter turned to spring. I started rock climbing on weekends, made friends who didn't know my history and didn't need to. I laughed more, slept better, started building a life that wasn't defined by survival but by choice. One Saturday morning, I got coffee at my favorite spot near Union Station. As I sat by the window watching people pass by, I realized something profound. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was just living. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Saw your parents tried to file an appeal. It was rejected. You're officially done. I stared at the message for a moment, then smiled. Done. What a beautiful word. I treated myself to brunch that day. Sat alone at a sunny table, ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, and didn't feel guilty about it. Not even a little. That evening, I wrote a letter to my younger self. The 19-year-old who left home terrified. The one who thought she'd never be enough. You did it, I wrote. You survived them. You built a life. You chose yourself, and that wasn't selfish. That was survival. I'm proud of you. I folded the letter and tucked it into my journal. Maybe one day I'd share it. Maybe not. It didn't matter. It was mine. A few weeks later, I ran into an old coworker at a bookstore. We grabbed coffee, and she asked how I was doing. Really good, I said. And I meant it. She looked at me carefully. You seem different. Lighter. I am, I said. I let go of something heavy. She didn't press, just smiled. And that was enough. Summer came. I took a road trip through the Rockies, just me and my car and the open highway. No agenda, no schedule, just freedom. I stood at the edge of a cliff near Estes Park, wind whipping through my hair, looking out over miles of wilderness. I thought about my parents, wondered if they ever thought about me, if they regretted what they did, if they understood. Then I realized it didn't matter. Their story wasn't mine to carry anymore. I'd set it down, and I wasn't picking it back up. As I drove back to Denver that evening, windows down, music loud, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy, not the fragile kind that breaks under pressure. The solid kind. The kind you build yourself. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sun set over the mountains. My phone was on silent. My calendar was clear. And for the first time, I wasn't planning my next move, my next defense, my next escape. I was just here, present, free. I thought about all the people out there who might be where I was a year ago. Trapped by guilt, suffocated by obligation, terrified to set boundaries because they've been taught that love means sacrifice. I wanted to tell them it doesn't. Love doesn't demand you set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Love doesn't keep a ledger. Love doesn't punish you for growing. Real love celebrates your success. Real love respects your boundaries. Real love doesn't show up at your door demanding half your paycheck. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping others navigate financial abuse and family manipulation, sharing my story, listening to theirs. It felt like turning pain into purpose. One evening, a young woman approached me after a session. She was 22, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to leave, she whispered. They'll say I'm abandoning them. I took her hands gently. You're not abandoning them. You're choosing yourself. And that's not selfish. That's survival. She nodded, still crying. Did it get easier? Yes, I said honestly. Not right away, but yes. As I walked home that night, I thought about how far I'd come. From that scared girl who thought she owed her parents everything, to a woman who knew her worth wasn't measured by what she gave away. I'd learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to self-respect, to peace, to a life you don't have to escape from. I'd learned that saying no doesn't make you cruel. It makes you honest. I'd learned that you can't set yourself on fire to keep people warm who would never do the same for you. Fall arrived, painting Denver in shades of gold and crimson. I celebrated my 30th birthday quietly, surrounded by friends who felt like chosen family. No surprise visits. No guilt trips. Just laughter and cake and the kind of warmth that doesn't come with strings attached. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I stood in front of the mirror. The same mirror where, years ago, I'd made a promise to myself. You did it, I whispered. You really did it. And this time, I believed it. The next morning, I woke up to an email. My company was promoting me again. Senior Director of Compliance. A corner office. A significant raise. I stared at the email, waiting for the anxiety to hit. waiting for the fear that someone would find out and take it from me. But it didn't come. Instead, I smiled, called my best friend, treated myself to a nice dinner, and when I got home, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't owe them that information. I didn't owe them anything. That weekend, I deep cleaned my apartment, donated old clothes, rearranged furniture, made space for new things, new memories, new chapters. As I worked, I found an old photo tucked in a book. Me at 18, standing in front of my childhood home, trying to smile. I looked so young, so uncertain, so desperate to be loved. I studied that photo for a long time. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I forgave her. Not my mother. Not my father. Her. That 18-year-old girl who thought she wasn't enough. Who thought she had to earn love. Who carried guilt that was never hers to carry. You did the best you could, I told her, and you deserved better. I put the photo in a frame and placed it on my shelf. Not as a reminder of pain, but as evidence of survival. Winter came again, a full year since that night in my kitchen. A year since the envelope. A year since I chose myself. I spent Christmas Eve alone, and it was perfect. I cooked myself a nice meal, watched old movies, and went to bed early. No drama, no obligation, no dread, just peace. On New Year's Eve, I wrote down my goals for the coming year. Not resolutions, just intentions. Travel more, laugh harder, build deeper friendships. Keep choosing myself. As midnight approached, I stood on my balcony watching fireworks explode over the city. Each burst of light felt like a celebration, not just of a new year, but of a new life. The one I'd fought for, the one I'd earned. In January, I got a letter from my mother. The handwriting was neater this time, more careful. Inside, 3 words: we were wrong. No explanation, no apology, just those 3 words. I held the letter for a moment, feeling nothing. No anger, no triumph, no sadness. Just nothing. I put it in a drawer and went on with my day. Maybe one day I'd feel something about it. Maybe not. Either way, it didn't define me anymore. Their choices were theirs. My peace was mine. Spring returned. I planted flowers on my balcony, watched them grow, watered them, cared for them. It felt symbolic. I was nurturing something instead of surviving something. And that shift, small as it seemed, changed everything. One morning in April, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about my parents in weeks. Not with anger, not with longing, not at all. They'd simply become people I used to know, and that felt like the ultimate freedom. I started dating again. Nothing serious at first. Just coffee, dinners, getting to know people without the weight of my past dragging behind me. I met someone kind, someone who respected boundaries, someone who didn't need me to be anything other than myself. We took things slow, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of letting someone in, because I knew now that I could trust myself to set boundaries, to walk away if I needed to choose myself without guilt. By summer, my life looked completely different than it had 2 years ago. New job, new apartment, new routines, new relationships. But the biggest change wasn't external. It was internal. I liked myself now. Actually liked who I'd become. The woman who set boundaries, who asked for what she needed, who didn't apologize for taking up space. I'd spent so many years trying to shrink myself to fit into other people's expectations. Now I was finally expanding into my own. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. It was my father. His voice was quiet. Tired. "Madison," he said. "I know I have no right to call. I wanted to say, I'm sorry." I sat down slowly. For what specifically? There was a long pause. For everything. For keeping score. For making you feel like you owed us. For showing up that night demanding money. For the court case. All of it. My throat tightened. Why now? Because your mother and I have been in therapy. And I'm finally seeing what we did to you. What we took from you. I was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for saying that," I finally said. "It doesn't change what happened. But I appreciate you acknowledging it." "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just wanted you to know. You deserved better. You deserve better." "I know," I said softly. "I'm building that now." We talked for a few more minutes. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't healing. It was just honest. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, and I realized something important. His apology didn't change my life, because I'd already changed it myself. That fall, I took a promotion that required relocating to Seattle. It felt fitting. A new city. A new chapter. A completely fresh start. As I packed up my Denver apartment, I found the envelope. The one I'd given my parents that night. I'd kept a copy. I held it for a moment, then threw it away. I didn't need it anymore. The evidence. The proof. The defense. I was done defending my right to exist freely. Seattle was rainy and beautiful and full of possibility. I found an apartment with a view of the Sound. Made friends at coffee shops and hiking trails. Built a life that felt effortless because it wasn't built on survival. It was built on choice. One rainy afternoon, I sat in a cafe writing in my journal. A young woman at the next table was crying quietly on her phone. "I can't keep giving you money," she was saying. "I don't have it. I'm barely making rent." My heart ached for her. When she hung up, I hesitated, then leaned over. "I'm sorry. I couldn't help but overhear. Are you okay?"
She wiped her eyes.
"My parents. They keep asking for money, and I feel so guilty saying no." I nodded slowly. "I've been there." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Really," I said. And then I told her my story. Not all of it. Just enough. When I finished, she was crying again, but differently. "I thought I was a bad daughter," she whispered. "You're not," I said firmly. "You're protecting yourself. And that's not selfish."
"That's necessary."
She thanked me, hugged me, asked for my number in case she ever needed someone to talk to. As I walked home that evening, rain soaking through my jacket, I realized something beautiful. My pain had become my purpose. What I'd survived could help others survive. That winter, I started a blog, sharing my story, offering resources for people dealing with financial abuse from family members. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of messages from people who'd felt alone, who'd thought they were wrong for setting boundaries, who'd been told they were ungrateful for wanting basic respect. I started hosting virtual support groups, creating guides on how to protect yourself legally, connecting people with therapists and lawyers who understood family financial abuse. It felt like turning the worst chapter of my life into something that mattered. By spring, the blog had thousands of followers. I'd been invited to speak at conferences, to write articles, to share my story on podcasts. I said yes to some, no to others, because I'd learned that I didn't have to say yes to everything. That no was a complete sentence. One evening, I got an email that stopped me in my tracks. It was from my mother. The subject line, I understand now. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside, she'd written, "I've been reading your blog. I see now what we did to you. I see the patterns, the manipulation, the guilt. I'm so sorry, Madison. I know sorry isn't enough, but I'm trying to be better. I'm in therapy. I'm learning. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I finally understand. I read it 3 times, felt the tears come. Not tears of reconciliation, just tears of release. I wrote back, "Thank you for this. I hope therapy helps you. I hope you find peace. But I need you to know I've already found mine. And it doesn't include you. Not out of anger, just out of self-preservation. I wish you well." I hit send and closed my laptop.
It felt like the final chapter closing.
Not with a slam, but with a quiet click. That summer, I met someone. Really met someone. Someone who made me laugh. Who respected my boundaries. Who celebrated my success instead of resenting it. We moved in together after a year. Built a home that felt safe. Where love didn't come with conditions. One night, lying in bed, he asked, "Do you ever regret cutting off your parents?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I regret that it had to come to that. I regret that they couldn't love me without trying to own me. But cutting them off, that saved my life." He kissed my forehead. "You're the strongest person I know." "I'm just someone who chose herself," I said. "That's all." By the time I turned 35, my life was unrecognizable from where it had been. Successful career, loving relationship, chosen family, inner peace. I'd written a book about my experience. It became a bestseller. I used the proceeds to start a nonprofit helping people escape financial abuse. Named it after my grandmother, the Catherine Foundation. The day we opened our doors, I stood in the lobby staring at her name on the wall. "We did it, Grandma," I whispered. We broke the cycle. I still think about that night sometimes. The night my parents showed up demanding half my salary. The night I handed them an envelope they never saw coming. It was the scariest thing I'd ever done, and the most necessary, because that night wasn't just about standing up to them. It was about standing up for myself, for the life I'd built, for the person I'd become. It was about saying, I matter. My peace matters. My boundaries matter. And I'm not apologizing for protecting them anymore. Years later, I got word that my father had passed away. Heart attack. Sudden. I felt sad, but not devastated. I'd already grieved the father I'd wanted, the one who never existed. My mother sent a letter asking if I'd come to the funeral. I sent flowers instead, and a card that said, "I hope you find peace." I didn't go, not out of cruelty, but because I knew it wouldn't serve me, and I'd learned that I didn't have to set myself on fire to keep anyone warm, not even in death. My mother reached out a few more times over the years. Birthday cards, holiday messages, always brief, always careful. I responded sometimes, politely, distantly. We were cordial strangers, and I was okay with that. I'd learned that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, that you can wish someone well from a distance, that peace doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. Now, at 40, I look back at that younger version of myself with so much compassion. The girl who thought she had to earn love, who carried guilt that wasn't hers, who believed that boundaries made her selfish. I wish I could go back and tell her, "You're not too much. You're not asking for too much. You deserve love that doesn't keep score. You deserve parents who celebrate your success, not resent it. You deserve peace." My life now is quiet in the best way. Morning coffee on the balcony. Work that fulfills me. A partner who loves me without conditions. Friends who show up. Therapy sessions where I process and grow. Hobbies that bring me joy. It's not perfect, but it's mine. Fully, completely mine. And I'm not sharing it with anyone who doesn't respect it. I still run the foundation, still speak at events, still share my story with anyone who needs to hear it, because I know how lonely it feels to be trapped by family obligation, how suffocating it is to carry guilt for someone else's choices, how terrifying it is to set that first boundary. And I want people to know you can survive this. You can build a life beyond this. You can choose yourself without being selfish. Sometimes people ask me, do you regret how things turned out with your parents? And my answer is always the same. I regret that it had to happen at all. But I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret choosing peace. I don't regret building a life I don't have to escape from. Because that's the truth. I didn't lose my family. I found myself. And that trade, painful as it was, saved my life. On quiet evenings, I sit by the window watching the Seattle skyline light up like a constellation. I think about that envelope. The moment everything changed. The moment I stopped apologizing for taking up space. The moment I chose myself. And I feel grateful. Not for the pain, but for what I built from it. Strength, boundaries, peace, a life that's mine. I've learned that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when you need them, who celebrate your wins, who respect your no's, who love you without keeping score. I've learned that guilt is a weapon manipulators use to control you, and that saying no doesn't make you cruel, it makes you honest. I've learned that you can't fix people who don't want to change, and that trying will only break you. Most importantly, I've learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's necessary. It's the bravest thing you can do. So if you're reading this, if you're in a situation where your family treats love like a transaction, where they keep score of every kindness, where they punish you for success, I want you to know you are not ungrateful. You are not selfish. You are not wrong for wanting to protect yourself. You deserve better, and you have permission to choose yourself. It won't be easy. They'll call you names, guilt, trip you, play the victim. Tell everyone you abandoned them. But your peace is worth more than their approval. Your mental health is worth more than their manipulation. Your life is worth more than their expectations. Choose yourself. Set boundaries. Walk away if you need to. And don't apologize for it. Because on the other side of that painful choice is a life you don't have to survive. A life you get to live. And that life is waiting for you. My name is Madison Pierce. I chose myself. I chose peace. I chose freedom. And I've never looked back. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if you've walked a similar path, or if you're still trying to find the courage to set that first boundary, know that you're not alone. Your story matters. Your peace matters. You matter. And choosing yourself isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning.